welcome to Critical Horizons, a podcast by the Future Laboratory. We specialise in making a better future happen for businesses through our proprietary trends intelligence and strategic research. We aim to give our clients a glimpse of the future long before the rest of the world discovers it. As part of our Futurists in Residence partnership with the Corinthia Hotel London, we host a regular series of breakfast briefings in which we invite a world-renowned thinker to discuss ideas that challenge the status quo and also shed light upon the emerging behaviours that will drive seismic shifts for brands and consumers alike. This month's guest is futurist Mike Walsh, CEO of Tomorrow. He advises leaders on how to thrive in the current era of disruptive technological change. A true global nomad, Walsh travels over 300 days a year worldwide, researching trends, collecting innovation case studies, and presenting on the future of business. Walsh is also the author of 3 books. His latest is The Algorithmic Leader: How to Be Smart When Machines Are Smarter Than You. What you're about to listen to is a recording between Walsh and Martin Raymond, the co-founder of the Future Laboratory, in which they cover the future of work, leadership, creativity, and perhaps the most pressing question of all: what is the true potential of human intelligence in the 21st century? It's Critical Horizons by the Future Laboratory.
So the issue of leadership, now, if you talk about, because you're saying about the algorithmic leader, it sounds like you want leaders to be more kind of robotic, more about logic, more about all of those things that we slightly shy away from, because we think leadership is about emotion, it's about EQ, and all of those soft skills that we were told in business books.
Well, I think we have to almost question what the concept of leadership is. I think it's a bit like Christmas. You know, we sort of feel like it's been around forever, but it's actually a construct. In the case of Christmas, it's kind of the Coca-Cola company.
Coca-Cola 1920.
Yeah. And I would say leadership is the Marlboro Man. You know, we have this construct, American construct of leadership from the business book industry it's like the hero's myth. You know, the man or woman who rides off into the sunset and conquers monsters and comes back and saves the village. And that's a big problem now, because you have still 21st century leaders trying to get their minds around being a hero and making the big decisions, and taking on the responsibility of the community and the tribe. And the difficult thing is, suddenly you're in a world where the best way to make a decision is actually sometimes not to make it at all, but to cede it to a smarter system that can automate it for you. That actually conquering all the obstacles is actually about something stepping back and realizing that you're just part of a much bigger internetworked whole. You know, it isn't about how many people work for you. And I've been speaking to a lot of people, especially in the States, who are experimenting now with automation. The biggest problem they have is that you suddenly have these executives who've measured their self-worth by the 100 people that they have
in the business,
reporting to them. And suddenly they're told that, well, actually now you're managing 5 core algorithms that are automating all these processes. You have the same salary, the same title, but you don't have all these minions. They're really struggling to make the adjustment.
So is the adjustment because they're not dealing with what I call, volume presence? A lot of leaders say it's about people, having lots of people around you who sort of see you as a, part of their tribe or their group, where suddenly there isn't a face to look at, or you can't really, as somebody said, victimize an algorithm, or can you? Because a lot of leaders see it about bullying and about sort of,
There's a presence element. A little while ago I was in Hyderabad, which is this really extraordinary Indian city where in the sort of the heyday of globalization, all the big organizations of the world would take all of your back-end processes and there'd be some friendly Indians who would do it for you cheaply and you wouldn't know what was going on. But then suddenly automation started coming in, and I was in this back office of a big bank, and some bright spark thought it'd be an interesting idea to, as they were replacing people, they would actually keep their desks, but there would be an empty desk with the word robot on it. Now, I don't know, this strikes me as literally my worst nightmare.
Like it's dystopian image.
It's like a manifestation of your worst fear, seeing your co-workers disappear slowly and be replaced by the word robot. But they were trying to, give a sense of, the visualization of what was going on.
Would look like,
And what I think we're going to get to, though, is that it's going to start to become increasingly clear that there is a bunch of leaders in our organizations who refuse or are incapable of making the transition. These are analog era leaders. And there's going to be a very clear set of people, whether they're at the top or in the middle or even at the bottom, who've adjusted to this new world where you make decisions in a very different way.
So can you describe the I suppose the nature or the process of that decision making? Because if you think about it, if it's people centric, it's about your EQ. It's about leading with, not power over. So what are the kind of core characteristics?
There are core parts of that that's still very relevant.
Right.
So one of the things I talk about in the new book is that to be an algorithmic leader, you actually need two core sets of skills. One is you have to have a deep understanding of human complexity.
Right.
Like, what does it take to empathize? How do you motivate people? How do you incentivize them? There are abstract concepts like, what is a great customer experience? Like, machines maybe can recognize elements of that, but they don't have any context for it. So when you can automate a lot of decisions, you actually need human beings to bring the context for why that's important.
So there's still people present in the organization. So are the machines now being used
absolutely.
to kind of do the mundane tasks, or is it tasks that are more complex?
We'll get to that. Because the other side of the skills you need are more machine-like. And it's really your ability, and I call it computational thinking, but it's your ability to approach making decisions or solving problems or coming up with ideas even in a structured way that you can leverage data, automation, algorithms to be more effective.
So the skills then of this kind of future leader, CEO, is it that they have to be more about being able to read data in a particular way? Because a lot of leaders, if you think about it, I was looking recently about dyslexia among CEOs is quite high because it's about their creative ability and their ability to be agile in terms of thinking. And a lot of them are saying that when presented with spreadsheets and presented with issues about...
I challenge you on that, man. I don't think that...
I was thinking of Steve
I don't think
Jobs.
data and creativity are diametrically
opposed. You think they're one part of the same thing?
Of course. A very good friend of mine is actually a data sculptor. He works with Frank Gehry.
Right. Okay.
And, he creates incredible visualizations using data. I mean, 21st century artists will leverage technology
to work on it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just I think people still, I suppose, have a sense of this person being remote.
It's like a computer scientist.
And robotic and analytical in a way that, increasingly business is meant to be about, emotions, about tactility, about, as somebody said, the adjective of the situation, not the fact. And it sounds to me that you're creating, or not you,
well, you need hybrid. You need hybrids. And I'll give you an example. So one of the people that I profiled in the book is a guy called Andrew Vanderberg. He's an astronomer. And so astronomy's changed a lot after the Kepler telescope, because the Kepler telescope was just a massive data gathering machine. It collected all this data looking for exoplanets, which are like Earth-like planets in another solar system. So this guy from Google, another programmer, said, listen, why don't we train an AI to look at all this data?
Just do it. Oh, okay.
And so they basically trained an AI to find planets. It was a planet hunting AI. And they started discovering planets that all the humans had missed. And the point is that the future of astronomy is computational astronomy. The future of accounting is computational accounting, computational archaeology. There's going to be no field that won't be transformed by machine learning, but it's not a bad thing.
So stepping back in that sense, then because I always go, what are the higher skills that, at the moment, I met a person recently who's teaching empathy to algorithms. So essentially, they're understanding that an algorithm will have an unbiased sensitivity, or rather, they thought it would, but they realize it contains biases from the programming. So the engineer will program the algorithm with their particular bias. So for example, the Google car didn't recognize skin color in the way that it should have. So if you were black, you were more likely to be hit by the Google car because it wasn't recognizing your skin color.
And presumably if you're a Republican too.
Republican, hopefully. So it occurred to me that even at that stage, so is the CEO now suddenly becoming more about the ethical judge?
Absolutely.
And the philosophic judge of how these
philosopher king.
Philosopher king. Because somebody said to me recently that they've appointed a chief philosophy officer.
Well, Volkswagen could have done with a few philosopher kings, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and Volkswagen's an interesting example because they were one of the first companies to discover at scale that even though you may think you're a car manufacturer, you're actually a software company.
Yeah.
And more than a software company, you have to be ruled by ethics that go beyond regulation. So you can't wait on the regulators to dictate your moral framework.
So this is what I was thinking, is that, you know, a lot of CEOs, if you think about the last decade, was about extracting value, and it was about, you know, demonstrating to shareholders that you were able to make a profit. And increasingly, you know, those things are now just, you know, increasingly frowned upon, but also people are looking at the ethical framework of a business, the moral. And I think when we've looked at AI before, the word morality and ethics keeps coming back in the conversation, because a lot of people say, well, we don't trust these things. How do we know that they're making the right judgment? So the moment they're using, for example, AI in American court system to judge the length of a sentence.
Oh, yeah.
So they're allowing the AI to determine, you know, when you come up on parole, they say, well, actually, given that these are the number of crimes you commit, the average type of person that commits these crimes usually should get an extra 6 months. So the AIs are determining.
Well, you need data anthropologists.
Yes, to do.
And you know, one of the people I actually met during my research was a lady called Carolyn Cinders, and she is a data ethnographer. So she looks at where did the data come from, what was it collected for originally, what are the biases, who collected it, you know, for what purpose. Right. So we almost need to look at the substrata of the data we're building the world on.
So this is where I suppose I was trying to take the conversation, because I'm thinking with those kind of CEOs, a different kind of knowledge set, a different kind of, you know, kind of interrogation skills, but also I suspect that they have to be somebody who's questioning the inputs, and most CEOs do that, sort of. But then they're fine.
Well, it's the difference between Steve Ballmer and Satya Nadella.
Right. Okay.
You know, Steve Ballmer, classic analog era CEO, football coach, salesman. We all have, you know, vague memories of him in 1995 on stage dancing, which you sort of never. Once you've seen that on YouTube, you'll never. You
never want to see another CEO dancing again. Yes.
And then you look at Satya Nadella, who's, as you say, a much higher EQ, obviously much more with it, but. None of these leaders were born. They all made a conscious decision to transform themselves. I mean, you'd rather see Reed Hastings running Netflix than Rupert Murdoch.
To do it.
Right.
But
presumably.
So on that, so think about decision-making processes, because if it requires a different approach, it requires, I guess, a different set of kind of knowledge, learning, even empathy skills. What are the decision-making skills that you think would separate the analog leader from this AI leader?
Well, there's two big ones. The first is, every time you make a decision now in the 21st century, I think you have to ask yourself, should I or anyone else be making this decision again? Can I rather make the decision, train a model, or build a system to automate that kind of decision? So that's the first thing. And the second thing is, we need to get comfortable with being more probabilistic than deterministic.
Can you say that again?
Let me explain it. That's better. That's one of your 6 impossible things.
That was my tongue twisting trick for the morning. Yes.
We need to be more probabilistic than deterministic. And what I mean by that is, you know, deterministic is, if something happens, then we should do this. Human beings are naturally deterministic because we had to survive. If a tiger is chasing you down in the savannah, you can't be like, I reckon there's a 30% chance I'll get eaten. You just run. You just run.
Intuitive response. Yeah.
We are deterministic about our friends. Well, actually, that's not true. If you have a 16-year-old daughter, she's probably quite probabilistic.
Probabilistic about.
So they have frenemies, right? Someone's 30% your friend.
Yeah. It's context.
So your teenage daughters or friends are actually far more advanced than you are with being algorithmic. And so in the workplace, we tend to be binary, like this is a good decision or not. A lot of the times, it's actually better to say, well, it's 30% chance that this is a good decision. And then as information comes in, you can update.
In lifetime.
This is sort of Bayesian logic, right?
Okay.
And this becomes important because in the very near future, even though you've still got your job and you've still got important decisions to make, there will absolutely be an AI system that's generating recommendations for you.
Right.
It'll be saying, okay, look, there's a 50%, there's a certain percent chance the person you're about to grant that mortgage to is going to default. So you need to start to understand confidence margins. You need to understand the way these systems make recommendations. And that starts to become part of your secret sauce in being a leader, in leveraging those systems.
So I think that is interesting, because there are times where, you know, you have a lot of data And what you need is like analysis or what I call data insight, which an algorithm can do. And I think for a CEO, quite usefully, it would be good to know the recommendations. So,
Absolutely.
If probability is this, my recommendation is that. Doing some trials recently where they were using predictive algorithms to work out the outcome of juries. So what is, they ran the model against the jury and giving the same evidence to the algorithm as the jury had, pretty much the jury acquitted more times than the algorithm. So what are we have this, I suppose, human risk factor that a jury can be swayed by the video or it can be swayed by the person crying or whatever. And the machine was looking dispassionately at evidence. It was evidence-based decision-making versus, I think, the human emotion decision-making. And I suppose with a CEO, because I always think about
that's a classic example of a terrible idea. I mean, because the whole point of a jury is that it's a jury of your peers.
Okay, yeah.
And the fact that it's not whether they're right or wrong, it's the fact that they bring a contemporary community presence to justice.
Right.
So that's where I think we make a mistake with AI. Just because you can automate something doesn't mean you should.
Right.
If it loses its underlying symbolic consequence.
But what were the key case studies that you felt contain some of the messages that you feel people would benefit from? If they had to read a short version and go, I know you don't want them to do that, but
I'm not gonna even answer that question. Only because I can't. In that it's not one thing, and that was the challenging thing about writing this, was that it's not like there really is a blueprint today for what we need to be. What I actually just noticed was that we weren't having the discussion about what we want to be. At the moment, it's all just the terror of robots are coming for our jobs.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is that if you look at the last computer revolution, computers didn't take jobs away from people. People with computers took away jobs from people who refused to use them. Yeah. And that's the same thing that's going to happen here. There will be job changes and redefinitions of roles, but they'll largely be by people who've or adapted these new tools to the way that they operate and increase their efficiency and productivity as a result.
And I guess also, if you think about the different types of jobs that it will create, I mean, the fact that, you have people training, teaching AIs to be more sentient, more human, teaching them how to recognize bias.
What are we going to call those people? Like AI wranglers?
They're now teaching leadership programs at Harvard on not as an AI leadership, but how you teach AI to be better people. And one of the courses is, if machines taught people to be better people, what would the machines teach people? So what they're trying to do is actually reverse it and get the machine to start thinking like a person. Because if you think about it, most of us are flawed and machines aren't. And one of the things I feel
like the NRA are going to pick that up. People don't kill people. People with AIs with guns kill people.
Will kill people, which is a good way to take me on to my next question. Because at the moment, thinking about what's happening in China and not just the data race, but how China has absolutely jumped ahead in terms of research, deep learning, algorithms, and suddenly what should be a benefit leap, because we should be arguing that, in fact, they've saved us a lot of time getting to this point. We're now pushing back against it. We're saying that we don't want 5G, in our houses because it's opening a back door into Beijing. They're going to come and spy into your fridge, perhaps, whatever. And I just want you to kind of talk a bit about, because I know that you spent a lot of time in China. In fact, you're half Chinese, Chinese and Irish.
I mean, that's trouble, isn't it?
Two great intelligent races. Just tell me why you think that the kind of, in the 70s, it was like the China syndrome. Everybody feared China, but then because it was going to overwhelm us with people, not with technology. And now we're having the same debates and discussions, but this time it's about China overwhelming us with technology. Because actually, China, everybody's doing so well, they're happy to stay at home. They don't want to come over and live in our terrible countries.
In answering that very provocative question, I'll do my best to keep my geopolitical Irish biases to myself. But,
right.
What I would say is China has two immense advantages when it comes to AI. They have massive amounts of data based on the fact they have a digital population who use not just they don't use Facebook, they use these apps like WeChat, which are like an operating system for daily life. So you can buy insurance, you can book transportation, you can book a massage. I mean, you basically can't live in China without this.
having it. It's an ecosystem that everybody sits inside.
Yeah, so they've collected all of this information, just not on what kind of ads people have clicked on, but basically the orchestration of daily life. And they're combining that with immense amounts of fundamental research into learning algorithms, deep learning, quantum computing. So you put those two things together, and they're going to have very, very sophisticated AI systems. And at the same time, you know, the West, we're kind of racked with guilt and
fear,
regulation and data privacy and the EU fines, and you know, we're going to waste a lot of time on this. Which isn't to say that these are not things worth wasting time on.
But it is creating a huge amount of attrition, and it's slowing the beast. I mean, the reason I was asking it is I was reading one Chinese entrepreneur has started working on an AI program that creates data avatars of people. So he said, let's create a data avatar of America, because they want to take Chinese businesses into America and target them more efficiently and just get rid of all of the potential objections. He said, let's just build a replica of America in every sense of the word, collect all the data of people so that I have data avatars of people in their houses. And people are going, this is brilliant, because it's a really simple thing. In America, they see this as invasion. You know, they're seeing that the Chinese are now attacking the virtual America, and they see that as all-out virtual war.
It sounds like a voodoo doll, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, you create a data voodoo doll and you stick it with kids.
So I suppose my question is are we becoming those people we feared? You know, because we pride ourselves in a country where it's meant to be about efficiency, progress, moving forward, embracing the future. And here we are absolutely refusing it. And a country like China, which was accused of maintaining a very kind of closed, backward-looking view of the past, is now literally building the future as you go. You know, when you stand in Shanghai, it's appearing in front of you. And my question is this fear a fear of technology, or are there other issues that underlie
it's absolutely clash of civilization stuff. And the thing is that the best antidote to most people's biases about all of this is just to spend some time in Asia.
Yeah.
And you just realize that this is not a new thing. I mean, when I wrote Futuretainment all those years ago, I wrote in 2007, it was directly as a result of spending a number of years in Japan and Korea and China, and seeing how advanced they already were with mobile technology long before we got the iPhone. The West likes to think they invented
everything,
but particularly the digital world.
Yeah, noodles and chopsticks.
And Steve Jobs basically took the best of what he saw in Japan, and he turned it into the iPhone.
Yeah.
And we forget that there's been a long tradition of us importing ideas, actually.
So just on that, because I'm kind of thinking about stepping away from your kind of writing and consultancy, and just going back to the notion of forecasting and how you kind of look at the future. And I know I was reading a piece on Chinese political history, and they had the scenario planning, which is something we kind of introduced, I guess, from the 40s onwards, existed as part of the Chinese civil service. They would do future forecasting, looking at potential, as somebody said, the objects that would prevent you succeeding, and the things that would allow you to gain what they called momentum. But they did it over time. So they weren't looking at a 5-year or a 7-year window. They were looking maybe at a 500-year framework. You know, what we call long-form forecasting. And
the truth is that futurists will often dress up what they do. And they're making educated guesses like everybody else. Because futurists always talk about what they'll write about. They don't tell you about the 80% of things they were wrong about. It's actually not about making predictions. I think I really see the role of futurists as provoking discussions around the kinds of decisions we want to make about the
how it could be. And
how it could be.
Yeah.
It's about philosophy, really, because we had this discussion, I remember when we chatted last time, which was, you said, how did you know when you wrote your last book that we would be arguing about these things? And the answer is because we always argue about those things.
Yeah.
It's just that you throw in some emerging technologies which create new conflicts about who we are, our values, our priorities. How do we feel about modifying our humanity, or people living longer, or economic redistribution or inequality? We've been talking about this since Marie Antoinette. right? It's just now it's universal basic income, or it's robots rather than feudal serfs. So the technologies change, but the quintessential part of what it is to be human and to live with each other is universal.
So I think that's what I was saying about the I guess the stories, because if you think about futurism, forecasting, in essence you can't predict the future because the future hasn't happened, but you can look at what is available.
You can predict the stories we're going to be telling about it.
Yes, and exactly, and that's the issue, is that we shape the future by the stories we tell.
Of course.
And increasingly, I think businesses.
Importantly, the stories we tell ourselves.
Yeah.
Because stories are our interface to reality. And that is, at essence, is really what this book's about, because we've been telling ourselves a story about leaders for a very long time, which is actually holding us back from seeing
getting to do the job.
Yeah. The story we've told ourselves, like I said, of the Stone Age leader protecting the tribe. You can blame Simon Sinek for this. He's been propagating this for some time. It is really, we like to believe it, but it's actually desperately wrong. For many of us, the future of work is being freelancers, coming together like a movie project, collaborating on a vision. And that's where people, I think, make a big mistake when they talk about universal basic income.
Right.
Because they said the solution to automation taking our work is just to give everyone a living wage and let them watch Netflix. But we don't actually work just to pay our rent. We work because it gives us meaning and context and significance to our lives. And one of the most exciting things about the world we're moving into is I think we will be more motivated by meaning and by purpose. And it's not the job for us to work for some visionary leader. It's about coming together to do something that matters. And companies will be more flexible as a result to allow us to do that.
Do you think that's because I just spent pretty much most of my day yesterday looking at generational motivators. So looking at Gen Z, Millennial, Gen X, and all of the kind of common factors were about meaning and purpose. So all of the groups you talked to said they wanted jobs that were about meaning. They wanted to have social purpose in the things they were doing. And when I spoke to people over 40, they were hugely cynical and dismissive of it. They go, no, it was money, we want time off. It was all very practical. So my question is, was that just an age thing, in the sense that as you get older, you realize, time is closing in on you, you've got to buy your way out of it? Or is it that we are dealing with if I chat to people in mid-20s, mid-30s about tech, about AI, there isn't that inhibition about it. It's seen to be an enabler and a way to escape mundanity, to move towards meaning, where the older groups see it as a way to trap them, because
Sorry, my brain's still spinning on the fact that Gen X is not over 40. Is that what you're saying?
No, so Gen X is 45.
Because I'm over 40 now, I'm
45.
worried.
You're very typical Gen X, yeah. But it's just more about the
I miss the days where people used to care about what we thought.
Yeah.
You millennials here, this will happen to you. No one will care about you very soon.
They're worried about Gen Z. So just on the dangerous ideas. Okay, 88, because we were joking in the office.
That was just for the Chinese market, but it absolutely did not work.
To do at all.
No one in China bought it.
So what was the most dangerous idea? What was the one that you felt?
There's a couple of things that I think sometimes you write these things and it takes a while for them to actually matter. Usually by which time people have forgotten your book. And the two which really I think are still just on the verge of becoming really significant are digital biology. Which, I mean, you saw that the Chinese just now have successfully created a pair of AIDS-resistant babies, because that's what the world needs right now. And which, as a side consequence of them making those modifications, are actually more intelligent with better memory.
Yeah. And I think it was interesting that
That just sounds so good, doesn't it?
Yeah,
I mean,
but
you can have sex with anyone you like, and you get to be smarter.
Yeah, that's how it used to be.
That's a very dangerous idea.
But I think the notion also of ideas being dangerous, that an idea should also, progress, develop. And we now have this sense that an idea in itself is dangerous, because it's
in fairness, I stole this from Oscar Wilde.
Right.
Oscar Wilde said, an idea that's not dangerous is not worth having at all.
Having it, well, without a doubt. What was your second most dangerous idea?
It's really about quantum computing, because this actually happened a lot sooner than I thought. Once again, the Chinese already have developed quantum encryption, quantum satellites.
Right.
The minute someone actually develops a fully functioning quantum computer, literally run for the hills, because all of your security will be gone. All of the bank tokens used to protect your money will be compromised. Just go buy gold at that point, because you're in big trouble.
That's it. Do you think that there's always an assumption? Because if you think about the future, there's always, we tend not to have a utopian version of the future. It is always about, it's like dystopian, and it always involves machines. Like it
That's
always
relatively
involves.
new, though. I feel like in the
think?
1950s and 1960s, we were much more, better living with technology. The Jetsons, we had
There was optimism. Maybe that was a period of because if you think about H.G. Wells, and you look at Jules Verne and Wollstonecraft, it was always about technology causing dangerous or damage.
I think it's cyclical, isn't it?
Yeah.
Maybe we do go through cycles with this. Now I'm not sure we are entirely dystopian. I mean, even if you look at science fiction films, it's a little less Blade Runner and grimy now.
I was looking at this whole new generation of chatbots which are being created, which pretty much when you go banking online now, it's a chatbot responding to you. Hi, Martin, how can I help you? Whatever. And it seems fairly reasonable because if it gives me what I want, I don't really necessarily want too much else from it. However, I met this chap recently who's created personal chatbots for you so that the bank chatbot can chat to your personal chatbot, and then the chatbot brings to you. Yeah.
Don't talk to me. My tech will talk to your tech.
Yeah.
Well, this is the future of social media.
Yeah.
I mean, did you see there's this guy who actually created an AI to replicate being a social media influencer?
Yeah.
So it just scraped really annoying photos from other people's accounts and automatically sent emails to restaurants and hotels asking for freebies.
Yeah.
And apparently it's been very successful. But so, that's really the near future where bots will be liking bots.
Yeah.
I mean, the real complexity around AI assistance isn't the sound of the voice or the name. It's the embedded data and the way it makes decisions. I mean, you think about it, search results can be biased, but there's still 15 of them on the page. When you ask an answer to a voice AI, it comes back with one response.
One response, yeah.
So the possibility for bias or distortion or filter bubbles is much higher.
And it's paid for it, because I guess what they call skills bidding. So you're bidding for skills. So if you ask a machine like Alexa about, Alexa, what are the top 5 places to go on holiday to? Somebody, what they call skills, they bid to have the rights to be in the top 5. So that, we even realize at that point, it is monetized, what I call, personal advice. So when you go to your doctor or your gym coach or whatever, you expect what you think is a personal service based on what your requirements are.
You don't expect an auction result.
Exactly, and they're the bits you're getting. So I think because we had this debate in the office about the they issue of AI. It's male, female, whatever. The simple thing is just when you decide what you want it to be, because what you're not really, as Mike points out, what you're not really understanding is whether the voice sounds male, sounds female, sounds neutral. Behind it, there is an iceberg of potential danger that is invisible, and you're being conned by the voice into thinking it's a neutral platform.
And you've got to think about the people who are building these things. I mean, I met Ray Kurzweil once, the guy from Singularity, and I said, what are you most excited about in the future? And he said, look, it's going to be amazing. In the very near future, we're going to be literally hardwired into the cloud. We're going to have these AIs talking to us. And I said, well, what will we use it for? He goes, can you imagine you're walking down the street and you see a beautiful girl and you've got nothing to say to her, and suddenly a very funny joke comes into your mind from the AI and you can speak to her. I said, you realize the horror of that? Literally women are going to be bothered by nerds, all telling them the same joke that Siri has offered them. I mean, this is literally a dystopia.
Yeah. One final thing, Mike, because we have this thing, I don't know if anybody here will listen to Desert Island Discs. Yeah, everybody's got it. You get your collected works of Shakespeare, complete works, in fact.
These people are too young to know what discs are.
You also get your one luxury item, and we give a copy of The Shape of Things to Come, H.G. Wells, great utopian book. There is a cupboard, we have this idea, there's a cupboard somewhere in the hotel, the story, that it's a time-traveling cupboard. and we're about to take people into it at some point later in the year. But if you could go into the cupboard and go to the future, because I know part of the book you look at backcasting, which is really about living in the future and coming back, having learned the lesson. If you went to the future and you were asked to collect one object to live in your luxurious Corinthian desert island, what would that object be, and how do you think it would change the world as it currently is? How would I do a reset? As in all great science fiction, the object from the future resets the present to do something in the future. What is that object?
Any true 80s fanboy knows the answer to that question. The sports almanac.
Right.
I just have to get it before Biff gets it.
Perfect. I'd like to thank Mike. The Algorithmic Reader is now available.
We've got 10 copies
10
out there.
copies here.
So I'll happily sign the one that wants to pay for my lunch money.
Yeah, perfect. And also, can I recommend Between the Worlds? Between Worlds, when you have something to do that requires learning and something that will help you better understand the future.
Or you have trouble sleeping.
Or you have trouble sleeping. Mike is the person to listen to. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you would like to learn more about how we can help to make a better future happen for your business, go to www.thefuturelaboratory.com and also make sure you bookmark our editorial platform www.lsn.global.